speaking of the big man, I want to tell you guys about something. It's called Big Man Gear. Now, Big Man Gear is the big man's idea of a funny merch brand. It's corny dad jokes and memes on T-shirts, and they're for sale on Amazon Prime. Currently, wait, can they still buy the unapproved Idiots versus Idiots logo tee?
They cannot, because I took it down because Danny has a problem with it. So
no, hold on.
I took that away. But I did
so those of you who have purchased this now have a limited edition.
Limited edition. That's right. But I did add several new Idiots branded shirts this week. Several I'm very proud of. I enjoyed a lot, so go check them out. Buy a couple of those. You'll enjoy them.
You can go to bigmangear.com because who doesn't need an extra T-shirt to tell everyone how they feel about their personal business and marketplace news source? I stole the big man's ad read because I forgot that he was supposed to read it.
I don't care. I didn't have it up anyway. So
okay, well, here we go. Here's this next story. I found this one very interesting. As you know, on this very channel, I do a car podcast called Carspiracy.
That's right.
We have episode 5 coming out very soon, but this is a very interesting story. This podcast was started at the tail end of the middle of the Dos Equis Pandy. And this is wild because this applies to me. I'm making a trip somewhere. I made the exact same trip last year, and I paid $200 for 4 days to rent a full-size SUV, and that's right, I'm just one person, and I rented a Tahoe. Because that's what, I'm not sitting that close to a steering wheel in a Honda Accord. But what I find crazy is now I'm making the exact same trip, and to get just a basic car, it was $600.
Currently $300 a day for a Ford Focus in Vegas. Just to give you an idea, and we're talking about Vegas here. Right. We're talking about Vegas. People fly into Vegas. They know they're flying into Vegas. They know, right? Go ahead.
So here's what happened. Like I said, this show was started at the end of the middle of the Dos Equis Pandy in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And we started it not really knowing what the future was. And similarly, rental car companies did not know what the future held. So last year, when their, traveling was effectively shuttered, no one was renting a car.
Nobody was flying, which is where most of their car rentals come from, right? People going out of town, that kind of stuff.
The 3 of the largest rental car companies, which there's basically only 3, even though there's several brands. There's effectively just Enterprise, which is also National and Alamo. There's Hertz, which went bankrupt last year. And then there's...
Which is going to come out the other end. There was looking at points where it wasn't, but now it looks like it is. It got a big influx of investor cash and stuff like that. And it looks like it's actually going to make it out of bankruptcy the other end, which would still maintain their top 3, right?
Yeah.
One of the top 3.
And then the next one is Avis Budget, which is... Avis and Budget are 2 different companies, but they're one company.
Yep.
So here's what happened. They collectively sold in 2020... 450,000 vehicles out of their fleets. And what's now happened is as more people are getting the poke, can't say the word here, I don't think. So we just try to avoid saying words that get us flagged. So as more people are getting the poke, as more people are feeling comfortable.
Ouchie.
There you go. I don't even know if we could...
Look, and here's what I think is sometimes in even big business, certain things are opportunistic, not on purpose, just again, the randomness of the world. But during, as you say, the Dos Equis Pandy of last year, there also happened to be a used car shortage in the market. So
there still is. There
still is. So during this time of used car sales prices going skyrocketing, they were able to sell off their used car fleet at a premium, which has essentially saved all 3 of their businesses.
Right.
But then again, you turn around and they have been selling off their fleet for effectively a year, and now they're 500 million cars short of where they should have been anyway, right? Before pre all this stuff, they were already, as they say in the car industry, running lean. I actually know several enterprise car rental managers, branch managers, regional managers, and they are very good. And as you said, Dos Equis, pre-Dos Equis, they were running lean, meaning
Right.
Branch managers are expected to have empty lots anyway, to be renting out more cars than they have already.
Right.
And they were doing that right, Dos Equis.
Yes.
So you eliminate 500 million cars, and now you're talking about...
Do you mean 500,000 to a million?
I'm sorry,
I don't think
500,000 cars. I apologize. 500,000 cars. 500,000 is what I was saying. A 500,000 cars from your fleet.
Yeah.
And now everything, and guess, since the Fauci ouchie, and more people, right? 1 in 4 people have now had the Fauci ouchie and all that stuff. You're talking about people that have been hooked up in their houses for a year let me out.
Yes.
Let me out now. So there is no ramp up. And guess what? By the way, because of all the things that have happened and the slowdown in manufacturing and the chip shortage and all that stuff, the cars aren't there for them to turn around and buy either.
That's right. So there's a shortage across the board of both used cars and new cars due to manufacturing shortages. And a lot of people, there's a few podcasts that I listen to. One of them is called The Fifth Column, and they talk about how, New Yorkers previously never really had cars. A lot of people, if you live in the city, why would you have a car? But a lot of people went out and bought cars because they're like, I don't want to sit on the subway with a bunch of whatever, or they're trying to leave the city and it's complicated to leave without a car. So a lot of people went out and bought cars who traditionally maybe didn't have cars. And I know the used market is squeezed. I know a couple of people in the used car market who on a weekly basis call each other to go, can you believe somebody paid $8,000 for a 200,000-mile Suburban, knowing that they're going to sell it for $10,000?
Absolutely.
That there's somebody out there paying $10,000 for that. I personally know this because in the middle of last year, I decided to sell my truck thinking, I can't believe somebody's willing to pay me this much money, figuring I'd turn around and buy something else. But I can't. There's nothing out there to buy. So I thought this was odd because it's a confluence of events where they made a chunk of money up front selling their fleet at a time when it was probably smart for them to sell their fleet, but unforeseeable hiccups in our supply chain and the slowdown of our chip manufacturing, because the entirety of silicon chip manufacturing, like the majority of it, takes place in Asia.
Correct. Asia somewhere, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Taiwan, sometimes China, some of it in Japan, but not really.
Right.
So their slowdowns, and of course they have priorities. Exporting chip is probably not going to be one of their priorities. So we are in a situation where Ford has said we are shutting down plants for the summer because we just don't have we can't have people out. There's nothing to manufacture.
Every manufacturer has slowed production for the summer, right?
Yeah, and Nissan is shutting down all of their Japanese manufacturing for the summer.
And look here, so what that has turned around for the automotive industry, well, in this case, the rental industry, it's created good old-fashioned supply and demand, right?
Right.
I get somebody to pay, I can now pay somebody $300. I can get somebody instead of $59 a day, right? Which is probably a Focus, right? Back at 18 months ago, $59 a day all day long is now $300 a day. And because of the way they run their business, you show up, and there's several articles when I started reading through this and kind of going through auxiliary articles. There's articles being written of customer service. Obviously, their customer service surveys are in the tank because people are showing up that have reservations that don't have a car. There's a couple of review articles that said, hey, I had to fly into a different airport because they didn't have the car. They didn't have a car for me to leave the airport, right? There was several of them that were like, I was flying into Fort Lauderdale, Florida, couldn't get a car there to be able to leave the airport because I'm not going there to visit family. I'm going there for something else, right?
Vacation or whatever,
and, and there's just, they're not going to be able to leave. And then you add on top of that, and this didn't make sense until I read it, a couple of these different things they were saying why people are renting cars that they didn't used to. People are opting to rent a car instead of rideshare because, again, health concerns. People are still renting cars for road trips instead of flying. Right? The road trip is back where we all were flying everywhere. The road trip is back, and if you're taking a road trip, most people don't take their own cars anymore.
No, not anymore, because everyone's car is junk now.
Well, exactly. So or you just don't want to put those miles on your car, right? If you're
Yeah.
like me and you keep your cars and trucks and everything like that forever, why put 1,000 miles if you're going on a road trip, on your car when it was effectively now not in today's world, not right now, paying
Yeah.
$300 a day, and that's for a Focus. Imagine what they're paying in Vegas right now for that SUV, for a
Yeah, no,
minivan.
it's 1,000. I mean, it's a few $100 a day for because I always, even if I'm traveling by myself, I don't like small vehicles.
I don't either. I do the national
So
thing where you pick your car.
yeah, so I do the same. I used to do the same thing, but it blew my mind that I couldn't find anything. So I just thought this was interesting because this is one of those things that we don't, we're not grasping on a day to day basis of the supply chain hiccups, even though they were minimal. They were expected to be much larger. But the supply chain hiccups were so, and we were
You couldn't
expecting.
foresee them. You couldn't. They were
No,
unforeseeable, right? And then and guess what? They didn't see it either. I mean, I guarantee you, Avis, Hertz, right, Enterprise, they all thought, hey, let's sell off these used cars. We're getting a premium for it anyway. We've got to do it to stay afloat. And on the
Yep.
other side of this, we'll
We'll
just
buy
buy back
some more.
everything we need, right?
Right.
And then people will pay a premium to drive a brand new car, yada, yada.
So here's where, for you, the audience, there might be an opportunity. There are two apps out there. One called the Veil from Allstate, and there's another one called Turo. You can go rent out your own car, and people are so
Absolutely.
desperate. People are so desperate for rental cars that they are. It's effectively Airbnb for cars, right?
Right. Yeah, I've
People
actually
are
saw for the first time in a couple of years the actual commercial. I think it was for Toro on TV
Yeah.
because it has gotten to that point where they see
And-
an opportunity, right?
and
The
listen,
individual rental car market.
right. And this might be a situation where I'm making a prediction here. I think enough people will get pushed into using Turo that travel that they'll just keep using Turo,
Yeah,
right?
that's what they hope, right? Again, we talk about stocks and investments, and because that's part of entrepreneurship. I think whether it's through your big companies, like we talked about the big three, or
Right.
apps like that, I think
Right.
there's some money to be made from an investment standpoint on these.
Yes.
Part of what's causing this problem with these are the three biggest ones. These three big ones push most of your. You used to be able to go rent a car from Bob's Rental Car or this
Right.
mom and pop shop. They effectively price pointed like Walmart or anything else. They pushed
Yeah.
all those smaller companies out of the business, and
Right.
now there's no alternative. Right? So because
Well-
they're suffering, the whole market's suffering, and it's everywhere, folks. It's Houston, it's Kansas City, it's
Yup.
Memphis, small markets, big markets, it doesn't
Matter where you are. So I know someone, I have a friend of mine who ended up owning, he was doing one of those things. He's selling a car, but he ended up getting a car from someone in his family. So he ended up getting his new car before the other car was sold. He put that sucker up on Turo. It was a Fiat 500, and he had that thing out forever. And then he still sold it, but the point was, he got that thing out on Turo. People were renting it.
Absolutely.
Listen, if you're someone who has an inside into getting cars cheap, I'm one of those people. I have ways of, and I got guys in the industry. You know, you buy something with a couple dings and dents, you pop them, you get them cleaned up. There's so many different ways to make money, but the reason I included the story was not just because of the long-term unforeseeable effects of the supply chain slowdown, and I wanted our audience to consider, where are the parts of that where they can profit, but also to point out to people, hey, you might be in a situation where if you're in a smaller market where, the big three rental car companies are less concerned about fulfilling orders in your place. You might become the only guy with a Camry. If you got a 2015 Camry that you don't drive or whatever, right? Because a lot of people now.
These apps should be going out there making partnerships with some of these smaller mom and pop used car companies, right? That have a fleet sitting there that, again, it could change every week, right? I'm going to sell it regardless. And again, nobody's going to put enough miles on it, and especially in certain places to really affect the overall value of it and stuff like that.
Well, then, the nice thing about Turo is you can put mileage caps and mileage overage charges into your fee. Sure. And there are services like we have in Austin. There's a company that will manage for you. So this sparked a thought process in my head. There's a couple of cars out there that I want to drive that I'd like to have, but I'm not going to use them every day. There's no reason for me to buy them, right? But I'm a car guy. So I sat down and I started doing the math, and I looked at rates on Turo and other places and realized, hey, I can buy these cars and put them on Turo, and based on current numbers, make money.
Well,
You know?
and if you wanted to, you wanted to take the opportunity to undercut, right, all these big name agencies that would normally undercut you,
Which
right
you can now
20%.
actually do.
Right. Yeah. Let's just say you're taking 20%. You own a Ford Focus in Vegas. You could rent it out for $240 a day, and that's 20% less than what they're going to rent it out at everybody else. And so that would be enough for me to use someone else's car instead of Enterprise or whatever else, right? That 20%.
Right.
And $240 a day, it doesn't take long to start doing that math, right, on a monthly basis. Half of the month, and you're at, you know what I mean, $3,200, right?
Yeah, and listen, if you're the kind of person who works from home, who gets their groceries delivered, maybe there's a few days a week you don't need the car, and those are the days a week that you have it out on Turo, and that works for you. So